Good morning. My dashboard is laid out with a title that tries to give a general overview of the entire collection of visualizations. It's entitled Comparison of Average Length of Stay and Cost Charges in Select New York Urban versus Rural Hospitals for two procedures, delivery and joint replacement. Under the title are three global highlights that can be used for the entire dashboard, and this functionality I will review at a later time. First, let's look at the different graphs moving from left to right from top to bottom. The first shows the average length of stay by general procedure. So delivery, whether it's a C-section, vaginal delivery, complicated or uncomplicated, as well as one for joint replacement and that includes both knee and hip. By hovering over the red line, one can see that both categories, this is the red line is the average statewide length of stay for both of these procedures. And one can see that both categories are actually above that state average, although the rural has a slightly lower average length of stay for both categories than its urban counterpart. The next graph shows the average length of stay, but outlines the result for the different hospitals that are in that group. Please note that the state average is a weighted average based on the type of procedure and how complicated that procedure is. That's why it's not a straight line across all of these procedures. So, this Ellis Hospital, the urban might do, although they might do more complicated vaginal deliveries or less complicated vaginal deliveries than someplace like this Samaritan Hospital. So that's why this is weighted a little bit differently than the state average for the Ellis Hospital and what they're actually doing for procedure-wise. The next visualization, the final one for this group, is the average length of stay, and that breaks it out further by diagnosis-related group and by facility. So one can see the procedures at which hospital and which is causing that big discrepancy or the big increase of average length of stay versus that state average. The color scheme for all three of the graphs is the same. Again, that blue for the rural hospital, red is the state average, and the urban are coded in orange. I have them grouped by that diagnosis-related group, the GRG, and then by whether they are urban or rural, and then they're broken out by hospital. So we have Ellis Hospital. They have in this rural, they have a very large average length of stay for these complicated vaginal deliveries compared to that state average for similar procedures, as well as for other hospitals in that group. So Samaritan Hospital, they have a much lower average length of stay compared, but also their expectation for what they're actually serving their community with is actually lower than the state average. So they're doing very well compared to that. The next group or graph compares the length of stay with the cost for each encounter. One can see that most of these are grouped together, so there's a very good relationship or known relationship between the average length of stay and how much that actually costs. Again, I use the same color scheme, so you have rural and urban. Orange is urban, rural is the blue. Please note that most of these outliers, if one hovers over them, one can see that they are primarily blue and primarily hip replacements. So that's interesting to note as we get further along. There is another global capability for highlighting available with the next set of graphs, which is looking more at the average costs and charges. This color scheme is going to be a little bit different because, again, we are talking about finances. So we're looking at the charges, which is and then also what the cost is. So, and then this gray line is that charges minus cost. So it's kind of the profit, looking at each one. And then with each group, you do have the average state charges, which is this lighter green. You have a lighter red, which is that average statewide costs. And then again, you have this kind of profit line. So you can see that for urban, for both procedures, both combined together, the average statewide charges minus costs is $13,000, whereas the actual for the rural is actually much lower than that, about $3,000 lower. So, and you can see that's probably attributed to that charges is significantly lower in the rural area than in than the statewide average. And actually the urban group is charging a lot less as well. So one can break that out further and look a little bit more and look by procedure. So again, there's that delivery versus joint replacement, again combining the knee and hip. And again, you have that green, we have that dark red for the total costs, that profit bar. And then you have, again, that state average for whatever that is broken out by. Broken out even further, you have it broken out by DRG. So you have, again, you have the rural C-sections versus the urban C-section. So you can go back and forth. Again, keeping that color scheme. Green is charges, costs are red, and the that profit bar is that grayish color. And it's also broken out. I have it broken out as well by procedure and facility. So if somebody wanted to see so if the OBs wanted to look, say, at Ellis Hospital and see how they were doing compared to their counterparts in the other hospitals, you could say that their total charges are a lot more in that rural area, but their costs are a lot more than, say, somewhere like this Ellis Bellevue, and their profit is $27,000 versus the profit of $6,000. So very different compared to those two hospitals. So the OBs in that group and the financial people would be very interesting to see if that if there is opportunity to maybe charge differently or charge more for those groups, and make sure that the OBs are charging everything they need to. So moving back to the top, we're going to talk about some of the actions or interactivity built into this dashboard. There is the ability on any of these graphs to right click, and you do have the ability to go to this website, which is an AHA, the American Hospital Association Rural Report from 2019, which discusses some challenges and that are facing rural communities and how to help care. So that might be an interesting article that some of these folks might be interested in looking at. Going back to the dashboard. Again, as I said before, I do have the ability to just highlight the urban versus rural. So if you wanted to just look over the rural keys, it is broken for the entire dashboard. Or you could look at by the diagnosis related groups. So if you wanted to look at vaginal deliveries, you could look at vaginal deliveries, and you would be able to do that. Sorry about that. And then the last one is the facility name. And you could, if say you are a financial person or a provider at Albany Memorial, you could look at some of the data versus the rural versus the urban for those hospitals in your group. And you'd be able to see only the data that's associated with your facility. So that might be a little bit helpful for you to again get over, because there is a lot of data and information on this sheet. As I said, that there is, as you go down, there is the ability to, there's a highlight available here as well. It's not on the top because it just pertains to these, not the entire dashboard, but only these financial goals. So if you wanted to see what the average total costs were compared or urban to rural, you could take a peek at those and just look at the costs and see where, maybe your costs, wanted to look at the costs compared to each group. So there is that ability as well. The final functionality that is built into this dashboard is the ability to just filter by that diagnosis related group. So if I just wanted to look at vaginal delivery, and I made it so that it was only on this length of stay versus total cost, and you can take a peek and see that where they are for that that vaginal delivery versus and where they are with costs. And you can see that there is one outlier here in that Ellis Hospital. So and then you could take a peek at C-sections, and it would show you a very different story for that group. And you can kind of see where all the C-sections are and things. And again, it's that orange and blue. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, let me know.